Hey guys, welcome back to the Full Co. It's the day after the Southampton game. Spurs obviously running out 3-1 victors in the end. So I wanted to jump in and do a bit of a post-match kind of video and look back at the game a little bit, and a few bits that kind of jumped out at me that were interesting. Some stuff that we did well, and some stuff that we need to tidy up on. And, you know, some of that stuff is going to sound very, very familiar to anybody that's been watching Tottenham Hotspur this season. So we can dive right into it. I think the first thing that I really appreciated, obviously the first half was much, much better than the second half from Tottenham Hotspur's point of view. I really did like the way we chose to rotate the Southampton team. We focused a lot of our energies on playing down our left-hand side. And to me, that looked like a very deliberate ploy. So there's a couple of reasons for that. Obviously, we had Jed Spence on the left-hand side. So in that three-man rotation up front with Son, Spence, and then Maddison was joining in. And then even at times, Bentancur was getting up and in there. But predominantly those three were pushing on into that area. And we were trying to move the ball to that side to really press and to tilt the field that way. And it felt to me like we were doing that because Kyle Walker-Peters is Southampton's, you know, maybe not best player with someone like Dibbling, but he's one of their best and possibly their most high-performing player. So it felt to me this was the way that we were going to pin them back and we were going to keep Walker-Peters from coming forward. So I really liked that, and it was super effective. We played with plenty of energy, plenty of tempo early on in the game. And we were able to force lots of mistakes. We were able to do that high up the pitch, all things that Ange Ball and his system is designed to do. So it was really pleasing to see, and we did get good possession of the ball high up the pitch. The rotations were working, and we were getting success in between in the half space between the fullback and the centre halves on both sides, but predominantly on that left-hand side. It was interesting that I think it was about 5 minutes before we scored the first goal, there was almost a carbon copy of it. So the setup, everything about it, you know, the classic Ange attack had already been signalled, and we did quite well to work the ball along the left-hand side. And then this time it was actually Sonny who was cutting it back. He didn't quite catch it sweetly, but he did manage to drag it back, and Brennan Johnson was running onto it with his left foot. Maybe a slightly truer pass and Johnson would have been on to that one, but it was almost identical to the situation that led to our first goal a little bit later on. Next up, it was really good to see that Romero was super aggressive from set pieces. So you like to see that. If there's one thing that Southampton do have a few of, they have a few bigger players. They're not, I can't speak to how good they've been at set pieces, but they didn't look brilliant in this game. But when you've got a team that's quite sizable, you'd expect them maybe to deal with those things a bit better. But Romero had a couple of headers actually, and from a corner early on, he had a really good chance. He made a really good connection. He was, very brave, kind of throwing himself at the ball. That's perfect. That's what we want to see. If he is going to perform to a high level for us, he can do it on both sides of the ball. So that's really good, and long may that continue. I'd like to see a few more connections and a few more goals from set pieces would be nice, because it would vary our attack a little bit. The back post issues, I mean, it gets a bit tiresome saying this again and again. We're having the same conversations, and it's a broken record. There's various different reasons. I do know that Ange referenced it in one of his interviews when he was asked about it, and possibly being slightly contrarian, but he's not being false with this. We did concede possession too easily on a couple of occasions. So the goal we conceded, but also the same for the chance that came when it was still 0-0 earlier in the game. But again, we just have to do better. The point about not losing the ball is absolutely key to us being able to defend better, just as a general rule. When we give away possession, we're very easy to counter against. But by the same token, when there are multiple phases between that and the final shot or the final chance, we've got to defend better. And variously, our fullbacks get pulled in too tight far too often. We're not reading the flight of the ball coming over. Our midfielders are not dropping in. Our wide midfielders are not coming in and, you know, providing extra cover and support for the fullback. There's so many things that we could do better in here, and it's super frustrating. And again, there's things that are happening further over on the pitch. So when we really squeeze our defensive four together to make it narrow and to block the spaces, there are times where I feel, you know, the midfielders that are dropping into the defensive positions are dropping too deep, and they need to sit out, and then they need to be able to jump in if needs be to allow a little bit more separation between the defenders. So if the ball is very clearly not heading into an area, a defensive player, a defensive midfielder can jump into a gap as it unfolds and as it's happening, allowing players to have a bit more spacing. Again, for me, we're too easy to play over the top of. Teams identify that they're really going to overhit balls to try and go in, you know, diagonally, over our defensive line, and they're getting a great deal of success. So, you know, it's really disappointing, and they had a chance early on. And for me, Porro doesn't cover himself in glory, but he does make amends in terms of he's the one that kind of throws himself and gets the touch, and the ball cannons back off the post. But yeah, we need to do a lot better. Then we score. So good time to score relatively early in the game, which hasn't always been the case. We haven't always come out and performed particularly well in first halves. We did in this case, and we did get a goal fairly early on. Playing out from the back, the quality of Romero, lovely ball into midfield. You know, he's hit that with some conviction as well. So Maddison, who's separated himself from his midfield marker, who for whatever reason chooses not to track him. And again, I think that speaks to how important Romero is, because opposition players are probably not even contemplating that he's going to whip that ball out from centre half across multiple channels through the midfield line to a midfielder on the other side. They're just not thinking it's going to go. And that's the quality he's got to see it and to produce. And fair play to Maddison, takes a very good touch to bring it under his spell, and then plays it out wide. And then we're out. We're already through the midfield line. There's, you know, no opportunity for Southampton to press, and there's nice big gaps and spaces for us to run into. I think he plays it to Son, right? So it's Son out on the left-hand side. He advances it, tucks in, and then a nice little overlapping run from Jed Spence. So again, that rotation, even though it wasn't high up the pitch, it's Maddison, Son, Spence. We're in on the other side of the fullback. There's nothing they can really do about it. And then the ball is cut back nicely towards the penalty spot, which is, you know, really, really hard to defend against, because obviously all the defenders are running back towards their own goal. The ball is played. Brennan Johnson, he spotted it. Solanke goes, he pins the defenders. Johnson spots it. He gets where he needs to be. And it really is a lovely finish by him. Don't underestimate that finish. He connects beautifully with his left foot, and he plays it, you know, he whips it, but he whips it with control and power. So no chance for the goalkeeper. It's a really nice finish, and it's a really good goal, and it's a classic Ange Ball goal. So we can see it can work, and so that's, you know, really, really good to see. So all of those elements are what we want to see, and then if we can tidy up on the stuff that we don't want to see anymore, then there's little glimmers of the Ange Ball goals coming. But again, don't get carried away by this. This was a very poor Southampton team. We were completely dominant in the first half, but it was a very poor Southampton team, and we should not by any means think that in our Europa League knockout rounds from the quarterfinals going forward that a game is going to be that easy. So that's, you know, not to pour cold water all over it, but we've got to take these things, we take the positives for what they are, but we've got to continue to build and to improve. And then we've got some, you know, we had some nice moments. I think Bentancur deserves a lot of credit. He was excellent throughout the game. He was really, really good in the first half. He kept the play ticking. He was dropping deep. He was getting up high as well, like really high energy performance, and he was really tidy in possession as well. So great to see. There was a, you know, there's a feeling that Bentancur, Berrival, Maddison is kind of settling in as Ange's first choice three. It feels like those are the three that are going to start the key games. Those are the three that are going to play, and the balance is about right. So with Bentancur providing the energy and the action and, you know, a bit of the defensive side, Berrival being sure in possession, and moving the ball about, and then the quality of Maddison and being able to pick a pass, and he's got really good numbers this year in terms of his GA as well. So it feels like that's, you know, cementing into our first choice three, then with the ability to bring other midfielders on and add energy and add legs. So yeah, they did really well in the first half. Towards the end of the first half, there was a moment that, you know, a nothing ball over the top. Vicario, again, you know, a bouncing ball. Ben Davies is, you know, doing his bit, kind of jockeying the Southampton striker. But, you know, Vicario, he's, with his arms up, he's at least 2-3 foot taller than the Southampton striker. He's got to just get in over the top of him and grab that ball, but he kind of, you know, spills it. It's not great to see. He really does need to improve on that still. Then we've got the next major talking point for me was the second Johnson goal. Obviously we had a goal chalked off for, you know, not at all clear offside, but okay, if it's offside, it's offside. Similar to the Chelsea goal being ruled out for a very, very slight offside. If it's off, it's off. Okay, we'll deal with it. But yeah, that second Johnson goal, it's Brennan that deserves all the credit for it, because actually, if you work it all the way back into the start of that phase of play, he's the one that really makes it tick. He's the one that speeds up the attack. So it was a typical movement where we are playing the ball out of defence. One of the centre halves sweeps it to through the midfield line into one of the attacking players who's dropping backwards, and they will just clip a ball inside. So there should be, as the ball is played from the centre half, there should be a midfielder reacting to that, seeing that this is going to be like a long range wall pass. It's going to be bounced off the wide forward into midfield, and then the wide forward's going to spin and go, and the midfielder can then progress the ball. That's exactly what happened. It was a really nice swept ball inside by Brennan Johnson, and it comes into midfield. Bentancur moves the ball up, and then it kind of, the ball is on the right hand side. So Bentancur moves the ball up and he sweeps a really nice ball in. It's kind of headed up and into the air. Solanke does really, really well to get his body in the way, and he stops them from getting a clean contact, stops them from getting the ball away. It pops up. Good from Maddison, nice header, and Johnson has continued that run, and he's gone all the way forward and now taken up the centre forward position, and it is a lovely finish again. So outside of the right foot, he just pops it wide of the goalkeeper. Goalkeeper has no chance whatsoever. So there's a lot of players would have tried to, you know, put a big surface on it or try and get a knee over it to volley it. No, it's a super finish, a lovely little outside of the foot finish. And it's a really good goal. So again, showing glimpses of what we can do, and a very pleasing goal to score. And that was it. That was largely it for the first half. Then we come out in the second half, and for whatever reason, I would be very surprised if this was from the coaching staff, we immediately settled into a low block. At best a mid block, but it was a low block, and I couldn't really understand what was going on. I couldn't see why we sat so deep. It felt to me like we were inviting Southampton to have pressure, as opposed to them dominating the ball and forcing us into that position. And once we were in that low block, it was really, really thankless for Solanke up front. And anytime we did get the ball, because Southampton didn't look particularly threatening, they had plenty of the ball, but it looked really hard for us then to get out. And so it was quite disappointing that we settled into that, and we didn't come out with a bit more energy at the start of the second half and play a bit higher up the pitch. But that's what happened. There were certainly moments where, kind of looking down on it, you could see Postecoglou was screaming, and I assume he was telling his team either to push up or to press. But they weren't responding to that. They were kind of sat in, and we won't know externally whether that's an issue with the instructions that have come, or whether that's players protecting themselves for Thursday. But it invited Southampton to have plenty of the ball, so that was annoying. Then we've got a nice fast break that happened kind of in the 52nd, 53rd minute, where we finally do manage to get the ball out. And the ball is swept out. Maddison does really well. I think he rides a challenge in midfield and uses the referee as well to kind of ride a challenge and roll. And he does that really well. That little roll across the midfielder to get out, and then whips a lovely ball out. Son is on his bike and should probably do better. He delayed it. He took a bit too long over the left-footed shot, whereas possibly you'd be thinking that at that point, with the defender coming across, I think it's Bednarek coming in across, he should probably have just cut back onto his right foot and slotted it in towards the second post. And then again, it continued that pattern. Southampton probably a bit too much of the ball that you wouldn't want to see, because a better team will take more advantage of it. But we didn't look unduly threatened, and then we kind of played slightly on the counter, and we had a chance. I think there's a chance where Solanke is kind of battering ram his way through and does brilliantly to bring the ball down, move it onto his left foot, and he gets a shot, which is easily saved by Ramsdale. Forgot his name there, who then proceeds to play a bit of handball, basketball outside of the penalty area and doesn't receive even a card for it. So that was very odd in and of itself. And then from about that mid 60s kind of moment, we'd already made some of the changes. We'd already brought on Odegaard for Son, and I think he struggled. He couldn't get into the game. We were very poor in possession. Sarr had come on, and again, this is one of my criticisms of Pep Sarr. He's a wonderful player, but sometimes he comes on and he's just not quite at it, and he's very profligate in possession. He gives the ball away, and he was doing that again. There were a few opportunities where we could have got out, and Sarr hasn't connected with a pass, and that is something he needs to tidy up. I don't know this season if he is still carrying the injury that was plaguing him. I don't know if he's playing injured, and I mean significantly injured to the point where it's hampering him. But he really does need to tighten up. We are not going to be able to get over the line in key moments if he's coming onto the pitch and then he's giving possession away. He has got to maintain possession and keep things ticking for us. So again, that lack of quality in possession was causing us issues. They had a couple of chances off the back of that. Just, again, defensive issues. They're like all over the place, defending poorly. I think it's Porro. There was a moment where they were attacking down the left-hand side. Porro just gets bodied by the Southampton winger, and he goes running in behind. And then I can't remember who it was that was kind of like just dangling a leg in. He just doesn't bother to run goal side, and he's kind of dangling a leg dangerously for giving away a set piece, rather than just getting back in and forcing him, to cut back. You can't defend like that, because a better team will take advantage of it. And then all of a sudden, kind of in the mid-80s, the changes started to have a bit more of an effect, and I was pleased with a few bits and pieces from Bissouma. There was a couple of points where he picked up the ball. He played a lovely little reverse ball into Solanke that set Solanke away. That was a really nice bit of play that led to a run through. And then almost a minute later, I think it was, Bissouma gets in, nicks in as we know he can, and he's got that strength. He nicks the ball off the Southampton midfielder and again sets Solanke away. And I felt a bit for Solanke, because he was clearly exhausted. He was clearly far too tired to run that ball forward and try and get a shot away. He probably should have just offloaded it to his right to try and build it from there. But he'd put in an amazing shift, as he always does. And then we move on from there, and it's 89th, 90th minute, and we do exactly what we always do. We defend poorly. We give the ball away. We allow Southampton to attack. There's plenty of time in between to have set ourselves. We're not, it's not a counter-attack. Plenty of time to set ourselves. No pressure on the crosser. He's got lots of time to look up, and he just, lifts it towards the back post again. Odebear doesn't help him out. Odebear does not get back in and help Porro out on the right-hand side. It's lazy defending. Porro doesn't judge the flight very well. He stays tucked in, covering his man instead of... as soon as you read the flight of that ball, you need to start looking over your shoulder and looking at the threat on the other side. We don't do that. And we've got two players on the wrong side, and one, managed to bring it down kind of off his face and his chest. So he gets... I can't remember if he takes another touch before he takes a shot, but he's able to bring it down in the penalty area, come inside, and then he's got a shot. You can't allow that to happen in your penalty area that close to the goal. And that kind of thing. Sorry, it's Jed Spence on that side. I'm talking about Pedro Porro. I apologise, Pedro. It's Jed Spence on that side. And again, you can't really afford to do that. But yeah, Odebear doesn't get in and help him, and he's got to get in there and provide another option. So even if he's running backwards, if that player brings it on his chest and starts moving outwards, he's immediately confronted by a Tottenham player who forces him to do something else or pass the ball. So yeah, we can't defend like that and expect to go anywhere in the Europa League. I guess the one thing you can say then for Odebear is he does make amends, because he's obviously a big part of the penalty and the third goal that we do get. He actually steps in midfield, robs the Southampton player of the ball, advances the ball forward to Johnson, who runs in and does really, really well. He sees the player coming across, and he just moves the ball to his right, and the player clatters him and hits him. Clear penalty, no questions. Really nicely done again from Johnson, who's played the entire game, and he's got the energy, and he's up there and he's doing what he needs to do. And then we've got that, that incident that some people have been trying to make a mountain out of, where it's barely even a molehill. An argument. There is, there's a pecking order to these things. Arguably, your strikers should be near the top of it, and the ball is taken away from Johnson and given to Matisse Tell by Kuti. Kuti goes over to Johnson and consoles him and talks to him afterwards. So for me, there was no issue with that. That was the captain on the field making a decision, consoling the player who's disappointed, because rightly so, he's on a hat-trick and he won the penalty. He feels like he's got a right to take it, but he's not, shouting and screaming. He's asking the question of Tell, and yeah, it's certainly nowhere near any of the worst kind of penalty debates that we've seen. So it was all fine, because Matisse Tell, and fair play to him, he steps up. He's got the bravery to say, no, I'm the striker on field. I need to get my first league goal. I'm taking it. So fair play for that. He's a young man full of confidence, and he scores it. If he doesn't score it, it's a completely different conversation, and there's a genuine question about, well, who was in the pecking order, who should have been taking it. But doesn't matter, because the ball ends up in the net, and so you live and die by the consequences of your actions and your decisions. Matisse Tell wanted that ball, and he scored the goal. So you can't say anything about it after that. You can't get too deep into it. So I felt for Brennan. He deserved his hat-trick, but by the same token, the ball ended up in the back of the net, and so I'm happy with that. And that's it. And we were done. End of the game, 3-1. I don't think we were under a great deal of undue threat, but yes, the amount of possession Southampton had in the second half was disappointing. There were good performances across the pitch from lots of players. Ben Davies again came in and did really well. Some of the subs maybe not so well. A lot of the key names. Romero had a good game. Vicario was okay. Berival was good in midfield. I felt Bentancur had an excellent game across the 90. Johnson again. Sonny was a bit quiet, but he was involved in the key moments for the goals. Maddison was good as well. So want to see more from the subs coming on. I was surprised maybe that Tell didn't get more minutes, maybe with Son getting a half and then Tell getting a half. And then you could arguably move Tell into the 9 and take off Solanke and bring on Odebear, something like that. I was surprised it didn't happen in terms of minutes for Thursday. But other than that, we got 3 points on the board. It was an okay performance, not the best performance. and everything is now geared to Thursday. So we've got to hope no injuries, everybody fit, strongest possible 11 plays on Thursday, and we've got to get out and get off to a good start. Don't let them grow into a game. Don't let them get anything that's going to, have our fans feeling a bit nervous, because we're all nervous at the minute, knowing that everything hangs on the Europa League. We've got to go in and really put on a performance if we're going to have a chance of going through against this lot. And from what I've seen from the Frankfurt team, they're really good on the counter-attack. That's how they play. And I don't think that's going to change regardless of whether their best player went to Man City or not. I don't think they're going to change that when they're away from home in a Europa League quarter-final. So fingers crossed. Let's see what we can do on Thursday. Let's not end our season this early. Hopefully get a good victory that we can go and then build on when we go back to Germany next week. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Long video. Come on, Tottenham.